Just now you talk about brick temple, which is fragile, but one temple which is, I think, very in good shape right now is the Prasat Kraham, which was the house of the Dancing Shiva, as I read your story and your 3D modeling or something like that. So right now you are still assembling the statue, which is, I think, in 100,000 pieces, something like that. The Dancing Shiva.
Not 100,000, but
10,000.
10,000. But actually, I have to be precise on this point, because I know that sometimes there are some misunderstandings. I started to work with in collaboration again with the Cambodian team from Apsara and then from ANPV in 2012 inside the Prasat Kraham, and so working on the statue of the Dancing Shiva. But actually, as you said, the Prasat Kraham was the home of Dancing Shiva, but the Dancing Shiva was not alone. There were 4 statues, other statues around this, around the Dancing Shiva, and so and you have, of course, the huge pedestal of each of these statues, and you have also built in stone the frame door of the tower, the door of the tower, and of course you have the pavement also in stone, and the lintel also are in stone. So what I want to say is that we have collected more than 10,000 of fragments inside the Prasat Kraham, so inside the tower where the statue of Shiva was erected in the 10th century.
If I may interrupt, sir, is it because someone broke the statue, or is it because the statue, become into pieces naturally by its own?
Alors, there are 2 main phases of destruction of the statue of the Dancing Shiva, but not only the Dancing Shiva, but also the other statue, the whole group of statues inside the Prasat Kraham. The first phase of destruction of the statues were at the end of the Angkorian period, so in ancient time, from the 13th century probably to 15th century. It's not easy to date precisely, so it's not easy to date precisely the time of this first phase of destruction, but at the end of the Angkorian period, so from 13th century to 15th century. But at that time, the statues were broken into a few number of fragments. So a few number of fragments and of big size. So because, and why it was broken, was the statue were broken at that time. There are 2 hypotheses. One hypothesis, it is because of a kind of iconoclastic phase. Iconoclastic means when you want to destroy the image of gods that are not gods of our own religion.
I see.
So we call this in English
the clash of religion.
Yes, let's say more. So we call this iconoclasm. So maybe for this iconoclastic reason, so anti-Shaivite, so iconoclasm, so a clash between Buddhism and Shivaism at the end of the Angkorian period. It is possible, not sure. It can be one reason that we have to think about to explain that the statues were broken at the ancient time, at the end of the Angkorian period. Another reason, also in ancient time, but not for religious reason, but is when almost all the ancient deities images in ancient time, after the Angkor period, or at the end of the Angkor period, were destroyed. Not the aim was not to destroy the statue in itself; it was to collect, to retrieve, the small golden leaves of the foundation depot under the statue.
The deposit.
The sacred deposit.
Sacred deposit.
The sacred deposit, and in this sacred deposit, you regularly find this golden,
valuable stuff.
Valuable stuff, but quite small actually. Very small, because the aim is not like a treasure. It's not. It is only made of very small, valuable, more with a religious symbolism and sacred value, more sacred value than economical value, you know. So there is a second phase. There is a first phase in ancient time, not easy to date, from maybe 13th century, 14th century, or 15th century, or maybe later. But you know, we have the first description of the site by the first archaeologist working on the site, or the first explorer at the end of the 19th century. And then in the beginning of 20th century, you have the first description by architect and the first archaeologist. And the first architect and archaeologist in the 1920s, 1930s took photos from the site. And this first documentation from the end of the 19th century show clearly that the statue were broken a long time before the 19th century. So that's why we can say that the first phase of destruction of the statue was between, let's say, the 14th or 15th century till, let's say, the 18th century.
Until that photograph was taken.
Yeah. And after that, in the 19th and 20th century, there was no any more damage observed in this on the site. Some statues were moved to Phnom Penh. In the 19th century, the goddess that was dancing with Shiva was moved to Paris. And it is now the statue in the Guimet Museum in Paris. But most other statues from Kraham, other pieces, were moved to by French curator at that time. Were moved to Phnom Penh in the National Museum. But there was not any more destruction of the statue till the second phase of destruction, of what we can really call a phase of looting, of destruction. It started on Koh Ker site, at the end of the 60s with the beginning of the Civil War. And this was so the second phase of the destruction of the statue, of the Koh Ker statue, but at a very different scale. A looting much more systematic and with damage, much more evilly damage, much more heavy damage. And why the reason for such damage? Of course, it was not to try to find sacred deposit. It was not for religious reasons. It was for to organize art traffic. So this looting was carried out in the field by, you know, some Cambodian teams during the Civil War, because it was, of course, a very difficult time. And the statue were moved to the border. And so at the border, there were some art traffickers. And the art traffickers sold the looted images to some art dealer, and the art dealer sold the statue to art gallery in Thailand and in Europe, in North America, everywhere in the world. And the art collector eventually, at the end of this journey, gave or sold the statue to some other collector or to some museum, like mainly in US, United States. That's why after years of research, international team and national team have been able to reconstruct the link between the statues that until recently were displayed in the American Museum and the original site of the statue in Koh Ker.
How challenging is it to reassemble the statues? Like you need to recreate the face, and also many pieces need to be connected together. So is it a daunting task for you to undertake?
Yes, in the case of the Dancing Shiva, it's as you said, a daunting task. Totally the case, because probably the looting and the damage to the Dancing Shiva statue is one of the worst damage we can observe in concerning all the collection of ancient Cambodia. Why it is so the statue was so damaged? You have to understand that this Dancing Shiva at the origin had 5 faces. So the dancing god Shiva has 10 arms and 5 faces.
10 arms?
Yes, since you have 2 arms for each face, and since the god, because it's a particular image of Shiva. It is not only a dancing Shiva, but it is indeed a Shiva that we can, let's say, called a Sada Shiva. So at the end of the 60s, when the looting started, 2 heads of the statue were already moved and protected in Phnom Penh, in the National Museum of Phnom Penh. And one was already in ancient time totally destroyed, and remained 2 other faces. And so the target of the looters was to cut off these 2 heads from the torso of the statue. And for that, they use chisels. So, and they cut off the 2 remaining heads using the chisels. That's why when we started to work inside the Prasat Kraham, we collected hundreds and thousands of pieces. And so among the 1,000 fragments we collected, so in 2012 and 2013, so IFEO team with Apsara and then NPV team. We have collected about more than 1,000 fragments. In this total, several thousands come indeed from the statue of Shiva and the four other statues. And you have among these 1,000 of fragments, you have 2 kinds of fragments. Fragments that we can understand as coming from the surface of the statue. Let's say the skin of the god, where you can recognize the shape of the statue, of the surface of the statue. And so we have collected about 2,500 fragments
of those pieces
of the surface.
skin.
Yes, the surface of the statue of the Shiva and the 4 other images. And so, so it's of course a huge number. It is a huge number because again, the statue was heavily damaged by the looter using chisels, because they want to cut off the heads from the torso, and so the looter have to start to cut the statue, the torso, from the bottom to the torso, and they go up till the head, in order to manage to have the head, the full pieces of the head. But actually, it was a very sad looting and a very desperate looting, because the 2 faces that remained on the site were already in bad state of conservation. the two other faces that were moved to Phnom Penh were precisely moved to Phnom Penh because they were in good state of conservation. And the two other faces that remain on the site was, yes, left on the site because they were in a bad state of conservation. And that's why the statue, this old fragment of the statue were still on the site at the end of the 60s. And even when the looting of Koh Ker site started. But the looting of the Koh Ker site started at the end of the 60s with the beginning of the Civil War.
Yes, sir.
But the statue of Dancing Shiva in itself was looting only in the middle of the 90s. I would say at the end of the Civil War and at the end of this period of looting. It was probably among the last statue to be looted on Koh Ker site. And it was among the last statue to be looted on Koh Ker site precisely because actually it was a huge statue, so not easy to move, and it was a statue with the face, the two faces in bad state of conservation. That explains why it was probably the last statue to be looted, and that's why I say it is very sad and almost stupid looting, you know, because I guess we can imagine that the economic value of these faces was probably very low. That's why it is the main reason why we have collected so many fragments, hundreds and thousands of fragments inside the part of Kraham tower. And so, as you said, because we have to reassemble hundreds and thousands of fragments, it is indeed probably one of the most complicated projects of restoration in Cambodia and even in Asia or even in the world.
Maybe the hardest job that you have ever taken?
I want to be clear, you know, I'm an archaeologist and I'm an historian. So I supervise this project as an archaeologist and historian and working closely with stone conservators that are really the specialists of the restoration. But it is a continuous dialogue between historian, archaeologist, and the stone conservator. And so stone conservator, so in this case it is a team of French conservators working with a team of Cambodian stone conservator, young stone conservator, Cambodian stone conservator, let's say junior Cambodian stone conservator, but also senior Cambodian stone conservator. In this team, there are stone conservator, historian, archaeologist, also curator, and we discuss. It is a collective discussion to take the decision about how to restore the statue. And in this case, of course, we faced many challenges to be able to reassemble the statue broken in so many parts. So it was it's a very difficult, of course, project of restoration since you have so many fragments, and because of course the huge dimension of the statue, so you have to reassemble some very teeny fragment, but also huge fragment, huge stone, very heavy fragment, a block of stone, and so it's not easy to manipulate, and it's not easy to reassemble the puzzle. And a last, let's say, major challenge was to how we can display, to the public a standing God, a standing dancing God. How we can display to the public a standing image. And since the statue was broken in so many parts, even if you try to reassemble the fragment,
the image will not be stable.
The statue won't be stable. So you have to design a metallic supporting structure. And this, it is in itself a very complicated project. That's why in our team, you have experts specifically devoted to this task, to how to design this metallic structure in collaboration, of course, with the stone conservator, in collaboration with the historian, archaeologist, because it is a reflection about how, what is the better choices we can make to help the public to understand the statue. And if you make the choice to, to fix the fragment, the statue, to a wall, to be sure that the statue will be stable. It means that you cannot turn around the statue. And as an historian and archaeologist working on the statue and the historian on the history of the statue and the symbolism of the statue, it was for me something very important to for the public and for the visitor and to be able at the end of the restoration
to have a panoramic view.
To have a panoramic view, because at the origin, as I explained, the god had 5 faces and looking
all direction.
In all directions. So that means that it's very important to understand the statue and the symbolism of the statue, the historical meaning of the statue, to be able to turn around the statue. That's why it was important to try to design a supporting structure that will make this possible. And this was a very important challenge. There is never only one possibility to restore a statue or restore a temple. So that's why it's important to discuss collectively of this kind of decision with the committee. And at the end, the decision, the final decision between different options to restore the statue, at the end, if there is some different opinion inside the technical committee following the progress of the work, at the end the decision is taken by Cambodian authority. In this case, it is of course taken by the Director General of National Authority for Privacy, so His Excellency Konpotika. So, and in the case of the Dancing Shiva, all the choices were made for the public. Actually, they will have a very good idea of the original aspect of the statue. And you won't really see, the public won't really see the supporting structure, except a small part of the metallic supporting structure. If you look very carefully, and it is important to pay attention to that, if the future public will look carefully to the statue, once it will be restored, the public will be able to detect the restored part. I mean, you know, we have been able to reassemble all these fragments, and so to have the statue standing again and dancing again. But of course, it was not possible to find all the fragments, missing fragments. The two faces, the two looted faces, are still missing. Yeah. But they are still missing. But since we know, thanks to the ancient, after the photos in the archives, we know that these missing faces were similar to the 2 other faces that were moved to National Museum in Phnom Penh in the 20th century. So we make the choice to make a mold of this preserved face, and to make a copy of these faces. So it is possible to integrate in the restored statue this
face.
this missing looted faces. But that's why it will be possible for the public in the future to understand and to recognize, to make the difference between the, let's say, the missing part we have completed and the original part. And we will explain when the statue will be displayed in the museum, of course.
Yep.
We will provide some documentation to explain the different phases of the project and to explain what are the original part, what are, let's say, the modern, the completed part of the in the statue.
Yes, but sir, how early can the visitors get to see the statue? Maybe, I know it is still a long way to go, but maybe 1 year more, 2 more years?
Actually, the project, the restoration will be finished in next March, at the beginning of next year, so in 2026. This will be the end of the restoration work at the Encore conservation here in Siem Reap. But it will be not totally the end of the restoration work, because as you know, the Encore conservation is not a place open to the public. It is as such a place for conservation, for protection of the collection of Khmer, ancient Khmer art, and so it is not a place open to the public. So the statue will have to be moved to this its final place where it will be displayed. So the statue will have to be moved to a future museum, and of course the decision of the location of this future museum is a decision of the Cambodian institution, the Cambodian authority. So as far as I know, the project is to display this statue on Koh Ker site in a future museum that will be built in Koh Ker. And so once the museum will be built, we will move the statue from Encore conservation to Koh Ker and to this future museum. But of course, to move the statue, since it is a very huge and very fragile statue, even if it will be restored, we will have to again dismantle and reassemble the statue. So we will have to dismantle the statue and the supporting structure, move the statue to Koh Ker and to the future museum, and reassemble the statue at the very place where it will be displayed in this future museum.
So it cannot be transported as the whole statue?
No, it's not possible.
It's not possible.
It's not possible because it's so huge, and because also it's since you have you have this inside the statue, restored statue, you have a metallic structure, and so if you move the statue without dismantling the metallic structure and all this block all put together, you have some risk to put some damage to the statue. So that's why it's very important to do that very carefully, to dismantle, not of course in thousands of fragments again. It will be dismantled in few parts. I want to reassure you on the fact that still, actually 99% of the restoration work will be finished at the Encore conservation in March of next year. But the general public has still to be patient, because it will be open to the public when the statue will be installed in this future museum.
So how do you personally feel, as a person who works and also coordinate the projects on the Dancing Shiva and also on Koh Ker in general, sir? Like your personal view on your work and also maybe on the site of Koh Ker, sir?
When I started really to discover the history of Koh Ker, it was of course when I was a young student many decades ago, and of course, as anyone else, you are I was myself, of course, impressed by mainly, the huge dimension of the pyramid, the huge dimension of some stone blocks and so on. But, in this, I have the same feeling that anyone else visiting Koh Ker or, now visiting the collection of statues now displayed in National Museum in Phnom Penh. But as an historian, as a researcher working on ancient Cambodia, I would say my main feeling is that it's really historical period and so interesting to understand more generally the history of ancient Cambodia. It is Koh Ker period, let's say what we can call the Koh Ker period, but actually it is the period of the reign of German IV.
Yes, sir.
It's a key period, almost a turning point in the history of ancient Cambodia. That's why, as a researcher, my main feeling, if you ask me what I'm feeling, what is my feeling when working on this project of restoration, or when conducted all this research on Koh Ker, it's my main, the first word I have in mind. It is so interesting, so interesting to and so important to understand not only the reign of German IV, but also to understand the history of the 10th century in ancient Cambodia, and more broadly the history of ancient Cambodia. It's a very specific, but specific period doesn't mean that it is something apart of the Angkorian history. It is precisely the opposite. It is a very important step in the history of Angkor in ancient time, because you have this new relationship between kingship, between the king and the god. Let's say the word of the god, and so it is one of the main reasons why we have this iconographical program so unique in Koh Ker. It was for the king at that time a way to redefine the relationship between the kingship and the divine lords, if you want.
Yes, Mr. Eric. So also the statue and also the funding has been, how does it work according to your process?
As I explained, it's a collaboration between, of course, French institutions. So in this case, the French School for Asian Studies, so the FAO, and the National Authority for Private. And so, concerning the French part, of course, the main funding is from the FAO, so it means from the French Ministry for Research. But also, we are able to conduct this project thanks to the support of the important foundation that is called ALIF Foundation. It is an international foundation devoted to the protection of heritage, in area where there are some conflict, or where in the past there was some war.
And also my last question to you, sir, because you have been working on Koh Ker for many decades. So in your career, do you wish to study Koh Ker more and more deeper, or you will switch to other, let's say, site in Cambodia or maybe other site in the world, so for example?
Actually, I will for sure continue to work. To work, it means for a researcher, or at least for a historian, to continue to try to understand things, try to write history, try to continue to ask questions as an historian, to understand more deeply and more precisely the history of this period. And this, it is something that, yes, it is a continuous work for all your career as an historian. So for sure, I will continue to have a deep interest for the Koh Ker history, also for the coming decades. Another thing, of course, is will I continue to work in the field as I did from 2009 and in the case of the Kraham from 2012 and 2013. I hope so. I hope that in the future I will be able to launch new collaboration projects, but for now the priority is to to complete this project, so difficult and so challenging project of restoration. That is not only for me a project of restoration, but also a project to better understand the statue, to have a deeper understanding of the statue. So it is at the same time a restoration and scientific project concerning this Dancing Shiva. And so we have to complete first this project. We have to work on the publication of all the different phases of this project. It requires
years to compile.
Yes, exactly. Of course, the aim is to explain our work, explain our understanding of this heritage, and I know that it is important now for the Cambodian partner, but also for myself and for our team to explain all this work in French, in English, but also, of course, in Khmer. So it's also an important work to prepare all this publication in different kind of in different languages. So all this, of course, requests some time. So huge work in front of us.
Still a very big thing to do in the future.
Yeah.